My name is Madison, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my parents and my younger sister, Jacqueline, who is 14. These days, Mom and Dad work long hours at the local factory just to pay the bills. But life wasn't always like this. When I was younger, things were very different. My parents owned a successful business, and we lived in a big, beautiful one-story house with a porch that went all the way around. I used to sit there and dream about my future. I still remember the sweet smell of Mom's garden roses and the sound of Dad laughing during family game nights in our big living room. Everything started to change when I was 16. The business began to fail, and things quickly went downhill. One bad month turned into many, and soon we were deep in debt. We lost the house first. I'll never forget the day we moved out. Jacqueline was happily skipping down the driveway, not knowing we weren't coming back. She was only 9 and too young to understand why we were moving into a small, crowded apartment instead of going home. To help out, I started working part-time at Tom's Cafe after school. I served coffee and sandwiches to people who once came to our house for dinner parties. It felt strange, but we needed the money. Mom and Dad both got jobs at the factory, but with the leftover debts and daily bills, it still wasn't enough. While I was getting used to eating instant noodles and wearing second-hand clothes, Jacqueline seemed to be living in a different world. She'd come home from school asking for new phones, fancy clothes, and big birthday parties. Somehow, Mom and Dad always gave her what she wanted. "She's too young to understand," they'd say. "We don't want her to feel left out. But can we really afford this?" I'd ask, watching them swipe their credit card again, even though it was already full. "Don't worry about it, Madison," Mom would say, brushing Jacqueline's hair. "She just needs time to get used to everything." But how could Jacqueline get used to something she didn't even know was happening? While I was saving every penny and working extra hours, Jacqueline acted like nothing had changed. Getting that college scholarship felt like I had won the lottery. I still remember the day the acceptance letter came. Mom and Dad hugged me, and even Jacqueline looked a little impressed, though she quickly went back to playing on her new iPad. "You've always been the smart one," Dad said, his eyes filled with pride. That was one of the rare times I felt seen. Usually, all the attention went to Jacqueline. College was hard but worth it. While other students complained about their student loans, I felt grateful every day for the scholarship that let me study without worry. I majored in business administration, hoping I could help my parents rebuild what they had lost. The day I graduated, I already had a job waiting for me at the Stanton Law Firm, one of the bigger companies in our town. The salary wasn't huge, but it was enough to help my family. I chose to stay at home, not just to save money, but because I knew my parents still needed help with the never-ending bills. But life wasn't smooth. I stopped spending on clothes and eating out so I could help with expenses. Meanwhile, Jacqueline's spending only seemed to grow. One evening, I came home really tired after a long day at work. My stomach was growling because I had skipped lunch to finish a project. I opened the fridge, hoping to find something to eat, but there was only some ketchup and a half-empty milk carton. "Mom, what's for dinner?" I called out, already guessing the answer. "Oh, honey, we're a bit short this week," she said from the living room. "Maybe we can order pizza?" Just then, Jacqueline came bouncing down the stairs wearing what looked like a brand new designer jacket. The price tag was still hanging on it. It said $200. That money could have bought enough groceries for 1 week's. "Where did that jacket come from?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "Isn't it cute?" Jacqueline smiled, spinning around. "Kelly and Joyce both have one, and Mom said I could get it too." "Mom, are you serious?" I turned to her. "We don't even have food in the house, but Jacqueline gets another jacket." "Madison, please." Mom sighed in that tone I hated, the one that made me feel like I was being unreasonable. "Jacqueline needs to fit in at school. You know how teenagers are." "Yeah, Madison," Jacqueline added, rolling her eyes. "You don't get it. All my friends have the latest stuff. It's so embarrassing when I'm the only one without new phone or clothes." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her what real embarrassment felt like having to wear the same clothes to work several times a week because I was using all my money to pay off family debts. But I stayed quiet, just standing there as Jacqueline looked at herself in the mirror while my stomach growled. "We need to talk about what's really important," I said, trying to speak to my parents. "We can't keep living like this. Jacqueline needs to understand. Jacqueline needs to fit in with her friends," Dad said, cutting me off without even looking up from his newspaper. "You know how mean kids can be at her school. All those rich girls with their fancy stuff." I gave up trying to argue. How could I win against Jacqueline's tears and my parents' never-ending excuses? While I was counting every dollar I spent, Jacqueline's friends kept getting newer, fancier things, and my parents kept trying to make sure she didn't feel left out, even if it meant we had no food. It all started with $5,000. I kept the cash hidden in my wallet behind my driver's license. It was my emergency fund, something I had slowly saved up dollar by dollar. One morning, I opened my wallet to add $10 from my paycheck, and the money was gone. Just gone. My hands shook as I emptied the wallet onto my bed. I checked every pocket, twice, even 2 times, but deep down I already knew what had happened. I had seen Jacqueline looking at my wallet the day before when I left it on the kitchen counter while making dinner. "Jacqueline," I shouted, walking straight into her room without knocking. "Did you take money from my wallet?" She looked up from her phone, eyes wide, trying to look innocent.
"What? No."
"How could you even think that? There's $5,000 missing," I said. "And you're the only one who—" "I can't believe you," she cried, suddenly bursting into tears. Real tears, with mascara running down her face. "How dare you say I stole from you? I'm your sister." Her crying was so loud, it brought Mom rushing into the room. "What's going on in here?" she asked. "Madison thinks," Jacqueline began, sobbing harder. "I stole money from her." Jacqueline cried loudly, throwing herself into Mom's arms. "She hates me. She's always hated me because you love me more." Mom gave me that disappointed look I knew all too well. "How could you accuse your sister of something like that?" I stood there and watched Jacqueline's dramatic act, and for a moment, I actually started to question myself. Maybe I had misplaced the money. Maybe I spent it and forgot. Maybe someone at work had taken it. After that, I stopped keeping cash. I decided to only use my card. No more missing money, no more confusion. Problem solved, or at least that's what I thought. Then came the dress. I was doing laundry when Jacqueline walked through the front door, smiling and wearing a fancy dress that looked like it came from Margaret, one of those brands where the dress costs more than our monthly rent. "Where did that come from?" I asked, holding a bunch of wet clothes. "Oh, this old thing," she said, spinning around as the fabric swirled around her legs. "I've had it forever." "Mom?"
"Dad."
I called out. "Did you buy Jacqueline another expensive dress?" They both looked confused. Dad frowned and said, "No, we didn't buy her any dress." That's when alarm bells started ringing in my head. Where was a 14-year-old getting designer clothes like that? The thoughts that followed made my stomach twist. Was she stealing? Hanging out with bad people? Doing something dangerous to get money? That night, I sat at my desk with all kinds of scary thoughts going through my head. Then I remembered my bank card. With shaky hands, I logged into my online bank account and asked for a full statement from the past month. 1 day later, I got it in my email. 3 charges stood out right away. $770 at Bloomingdale's, $500 at Rockefeller Center, $900 at Bergdorf Goodman. Each one had details listed: a size 3 cocktail dress, a medium blouse, size 5 shoes. All of them were Jacqueline sizes. All her favorite brands. All her new clothes. My stomach dropped. Over $2,170 gone. Jacqueline hadn't just taken money from my wallet. She had been using my credit card the whole time. The new dress wasn't stolen from a store or given to her. It was bought with my money. And I hadn't even noticed. I found her in her room, trying on one of the new outfits. My outfit, technically, since I paid for it. "Nice dress," I said, leaning on the doorframe. "Bergdorf Goodman, right? About $900? She froze in the middle of spinning, but only for a second. "What are you talking about?" "Stop pretending, Jacqueline," I said. "I have the credit card statements right here." I held up the papers. 3 shopping trips, $2,170. All in your size. All from your favorite stores. You're crazy, Jacqueline said, but her voice shook a little. Really?
I said.
Should we call the stores? I bet their cameras caught some interesting videos. Want to see yourself shopping with my card? Jacqueline's face turned pale for a second, but she quickly acted normal again. Whatever. You can't prove anything.
Mom.
Dad, I shouted. Family meeting now. They both came into the living room. Dad was still in his work clothes, and Mom was wiping her hands on a dish towel. I laid the bank papers on the coffee table. Look at these, I said, pointing at the charges. Jacqueline used my credit card. She spent $2,170 on clothes. Dad frowned and adjusted his glasses. Madison, that's a big accusation. Are you sure you didn't just forget? Forget spending $2,170 on clothes? In Jacqueline's eyes. I said, shocked. Really, Dad? Mom picked up the papers and looked at the list. Well, even if, and I'm not saying she did, but even if Jacqueline used your card, she's at a difficult age. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? She stole from me, I said. Teenagers do silly things sometimes, Mom said, gently holding Jacqueline's hand. It's just part of growing up. Remember when you were her age? When I was her age, I wasn't stealing thousands of dollars from my family. I shouted. Don't be so dramatic, Madison, Mom said with a sigh. If it was Jacqueline, and we're not saying it was, maybe we just think of it as an early birthday gift. I stared at her in disbelief. A birthday gift? She stole from me. That's credit card fraud. Now you're just making it sound worse than it is, Mom said, waving her hand like it didn't matter. Jacqueline is going through changes. Her friends have nice things, and she's trying to fit in. You need to be more understanding. Understanding, I said, feeling like I was losing my mind. She stole $2,170 from me. Madison, Dad finally spoke up. Your mom's right. You're making too much of this. Just let it go. Jacqueline sat there the whole time with a small smile on her face. She knew she'd won. She always won. You don't understand what you're doing, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. This isn't even about the money anymore. If Jacqueline is stealing from family now, what's next? She could get into serious trouble later. There it is, Dad said, shaking his head. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of your sister. I let out a bitter laugh. Jealous? Of what? Being a thief? Being spoiled rotten? See, Mom said, pointing at me. This is what jealousy looks like. You just can't handle that we give Jacqueline nice things. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. It felt like the walls were closing in, and every look from my family felt like another stab in the back. I grabbed my car keys and drove through the dark streets, not really knowing where I was going. Somehow, I ended up outside Evelyn's apartment. She had been my closest friend since we started working together, and right then, I needed someone who would understand and tell me the truth. Evelyn's apartment always felt safe. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything: the stolen money, the credit card charges, and how my parents refused to see what was really happening. The wine she poured helped me calm down, but it didn't take away the pain of how my family had betrayed me. This is crazy, Evelyn said when I finished talking. Your sister needs a serious wake-up call before she ends up in real trouble. I've tried everything, I said with a tired sigh. They just keep making excuses for her. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, gently spinning the wine in her glass. You know, my Uncle Mark's a police officer. Maybe he could help. I looked up. What do you mean? He could stop by your house and talk to your sister. Scare her a bit. Help her understand this isn't a joke. He's done it before for other families. Sometimes kids need to see how serious things can get. Over the next 1 days, we made a plan. Everything had to feel real. Jacqueline needed to believe she was actually in trouble. We planned it for dinner time, so everyone would be home. That evening, we sat around the table like it was any normal night. Mom had made lasagna, and the smell filled the house. Normally, that smell felt warm and comforting. But tonight, I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. Jacqueline talked the most, like she always did. She had no idea her world was about to change. "I'll get it," she said cheerfully when the doorbell rang. She probably thought it was one of her friends. But when she opened the door and saw Officer Richard standing there in full uniform, his badge shining under the porch light, everything changed. Her face turned pale, and she stepped back, almost tripping over her feet. "What's going on?" Mom said, rushing to the door. Dad was right behind her. "I called them," I said as I stood up from the table. My voice was steady, even though my heart was beating fast. "Someone stole $2,170 from my credit card. I want to know who did it." Officer Richard stood in the living room. The room felt heavy and quiet. Jacqueline had dropped onto the couch, already crying. Our parents stood nearby, looking confused and worried. "Miss Jacqueline," Officer Richard began. His voice was firm but calm. "We have strong evidence that credit card fraud happened at this address. Store records, camera footage, and witness statements all point to you." Jacqueline cried even harder, but Officer Richard didn't stop. "I've seen cases like this before. Good kids from good homes who thought stealing a little money wouldn't matter. Do you know where most of them end up?" He paused and let the silence sink in. Jacqueline shook her head slightly, her mascara running down her face. "There was a girl about your age," he said. "She started by stealing from her family just like this. She thought it was no big deal. Last month, I had to arrest her for grand theft. She could go to jail for years." He leaned in a bit. "Is that what you want for yourself, Jacqueline?" Mom tried to speak, but Officer Richard raised his hand. "Ma'am, your daughter needs to understand how serious this is. Credit card fraud is a crime. Right now, we can handle this in the family if the money is returned and this behavior stops right away. But if it doesn't," he let the warning hang in the air. I watched from the doorway as Jacqueline broke down under the pressure. She was finally facing the truth. When Officer Richard left, I thought my parents would finally see things clearly. I hoped they'd understand why I was so worried about Jacqueline. But I was completely wrong. As soon as the door closed, Mom turned on me with anger I had never seen before. "How dare you?" she screamed. Her face was twisted with rage. "How could you bring the police into this house?" I stepped back, shocked. Mom never used that kind of language. "She's 14, Mom shouted. "She's just a child, and you brought the police to scare her? What kind of person does that?" "I was trying to help her," I said quietly. "She needed to see." "You weren't trying to help anyone," Mom snapped. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of Jacqueline. You're a selfish, ungrateful girl." Dad, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His voice was low but full of cold anger. "Get out," he said. "Get out of this house. You're no daughter of mine. No daughter of mine would do this to her sister." I looked at both of them, Mom, red with anger, Dad, cold and distant, and then at Jacqueline, who now wore a small, smug smile behind her tears. And just like that, I felt very calm. The next morning, I packed up my life into boxes and bags. It was strange how 16 years of memories could fit into such a small space. Every item reminded me of something: my high school graduation photo, the mug I used every morning, and the blanket Mom gave me for Christmas years ago. I left that blanket behind. Jacqueline stood in her doorway, watching me carry the boxes to my car. She didn't offer to help, and I didn't ask. Mom and Dad had already left for work without saying goodbye. The silence in the house felt heavy. Finding a new place wasn't hard. My job at the Stanton law firm paid well, so I was able to rent a small one-bedroom apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No stolen credit cards, no family drama, no guilt, just peace and quiet. That first month, I started building a new life. I bought used furniture, found the cheapest grocery store, and figured out which neighbor smiled back when I said hello. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. Then one Sunday evening, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Madison," she said, her voice softer than last time, "your father and I have been talking. We forgive you for what happened." I almost laughed. "They forgave me? We want you to come home," she continued. And we need help with the loan payment this month. Things have been tight since you left. I felt the familiar guilt trying to creep in, but this time I didn't let it win. No, I said. You don't get to call me names, throw me out, and then ask for money. I'm done. Madison, please, she began, but I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad and Jacqueline too. It felt awful, but also freeing. Next came the emails, messages saying they were behind on bills, begging for help. I blocked those too. Then came messages on social media, from old family friends, distant relatives, anyone they could reach out to. They all talked about family, forgiveness, and asked for money. I blocked them all. One Monday morning, they showed up at my office building. I watched from the third floor as they argued with the security guards in the lobby. I had already warned the guards not to let them up. Dad looked older than I remembered. Shoulders slouched like the stress was too much. Mom was crying and causing a scene just like she always did. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. There were contracts to read, meetings to attend, and a life to live, a life that was finally mine. It's been 5 months since I last talked to my family. My small apartment now feels like a real home. It's filled with plants, books, and a calm feeling I never knew I needed. Sometimes, when I sit on my secondhand couch with a cup of tea and watch the sunset through the window, I wonder how they're doing. Evelyn still tells me what she hears, even though I never ask. She lives nearby and runs into them sometimes. Last week, she said Dad got a second job at the hardware store. He works evenings and weekends now. I picture him, already tired from his factory job, spending his nights putting items on shelves. That thought weighs heavy on my heart. He's working so hard because they can't manage without the money I used to give them. Evelyn also said the bank is helping them change their loan plans. Mom's been going there a lot, crying and trying to make people feel sorry for her, the same way she used to do with me. But banks don't care about crying mothers or teenage daughters who want expensive clothes. They only care about getting paid. And now, my parents are running out of ways to pay. Their lifestyle has changed a lot since I left. No more shopping sprees for Jacqueline. No more fancy gadgets or designer things. Evelyn told me she saw Jacqueline wear the same clothes twice in 1 week. 5 months ago, that would have never happened. Part of me hopes this is teaching her something my parents never could. But honestly, I'm not sure it will. Sometimes, especially at night when everything is quiet, I feel guilty. I think about Dad, his rough hands from years of hard work, now counting items at the store instead of resting. I think about Mom, who, despite everything, is still my mother. I even think about Jacqueline, who is only 16, still a child in many ways, shaped by years of being spoiled. But then I remember the night they kicked me out. I remember Mom calling me trash. I remember Dad telling me I wasn't his daughter anymore. I remember Jacqueline smiling behind her fake tears. I remember all the years I gave everything I had, only to be treated like an aim, not a daughter. That guilt goes away. And what comes instead is a strong feeling that I need to protect the peace I've finally found. My friends tell me, people say I should try to make peace with my family, because family is family no matter what. But they don't understand that fixing things means both sides have to admit what went wrong. My parents still believe they did nothing wrong. They don't want to make things right. They just want their human ATM back. I'm sure Jacqueline hasn't thought much about me either, except when she misses her endless shopping trips. Maybe one day things will change. Maybe Dad will see that always protecting Jacqueline caused more harm than good. Maybe Mom will realize that love isn't about buying designer clothes or maxing out credit cards. Maybe Jacqueline will grow up and understand what she lost when she broke my trust. Maybe, just maybe, they'll miss me for who I am, not for the money I gave. But until that day comes, I'm living my own life. Last month, I got a promotion at work. Now, I'm even thinking about buying my own place instead of renting. I'm learning who I really am without the pressure of trying to please everyone in my family. And I've learned something important. It's possible to miss people and still know your life is better without them.